Good morning, Doha Heat, and welcome to another episode this Ramadan. Today in the studio we have a very special guest with us, Mary Bugg.
Hi.
And what we usually do is we allow our special guest of honor to introduce themselves in order for them to do themselves justice. So without further ado, would you like to just tell us a little tiny brief about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Mary Bugg. I'm a yoga teacher now. I came to Doha 3 years ago. I came with my husband, who sponsors me, and our 2 children. He's with Qatar Airways, so he's flight deck with Qatar Airways. And I came in my original career, my initial career, as a film producer.
Wow, okay.
So I'd worked in the film industry for just over 25 years in the British film industry. I sort of worked my way up through all of the stages from a runner, assistant director, production coordinator, production manager, and script supervisor, script consultant, and came into production. Now, funnily enough, my first visit was to Ginger Camel.
Your first ever visit?
My first ever visit to start networking my career in Doha was to visit Stefan at Ginger Camel. So it's really nice to be back here today and to see everybody.
It's almost like a milestone or some kind for you,
yeah. It is. And, you know, he was super supportive and started to give me the background on who to talk to, where to go.
Yeah.
And I started to work quite happily throughout the industry here in Doha and made loads of connections, still have super friends here.
Amazing.
And then life started to sort of change. You know, as a mummy, you go through different phases of your life, your life cycle. And so the children get to a stage where they're a lot more independent. They don't need you so much physically. They maybe need you more emotionally. And so I was beginning to get to a stage where producing was quite absorbing. It was taking a lot of my time, and I needed to be there for my children more. And this coincided at the same time with my daughter's career in the industry beginning to take off. And she's sort of started to make short films, she's building her own crew, she's writing her own scripts. And our dynamic came to a place where I was producing for her.
Wow, so following Mommy's footsteps.
Yeah.
And then you becoming her producer.
Her producer. And conversations in the kitchen at the washing up was more about what I thought of this character analyzation, what I thought of this breakdown, and I began to think, I think I want to take a step back and find a mummy role.
Yeah, so rather than that, I was just going to say that emotional mother role, you became producer role.
Right.
At home.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So it seemed like an organic opportunity to take a step back and think about what else I wanted to do. And she's leaving for university shortly. So again, I'm getting a little bit more freedom. My son is a little more independent. And I was thinking, why can't I retire in about 15 years? Which doesn't sound soon, but it does when you're like, I have to start making plans for this because there's a lot I want to do before my bones cease up. You know, and I've always practiced yoga. I've always had a great enjoyment for the understanding of the philosophy, the anatomy. Meditation and prayer has always played a huge part in my life as well. So there then became this sort of day of serendipity, if you like.
Yeah.
Last summer, we'd come back from the family vacation. I know everyone in Doha, like mass exodus.
Yeah.
You know, ours tends to be the first 2 weeks of the summer holiday. We come back, and then we look for the summer camps, the activities. We like to stay in Doha because my husband's still here. So, and the children were doing a workshop, and I dropped them off. And I've been thinking about really, what do I want to do next? I was really exploring this dilemma and looking at what did I like about life, what did I want to get out of life, what did I want to do, what did I want to achieve.
So back to the interview, Mary, you were mentioning something about a turning point in your life.
So there was that moment of serendipity that I experienced when I went into Nia Yoga at the Pearl, and I sort of walked in and saw Charlie de Rivas, the wonderful studio manager there. And it was just such a moment where I realised something feels different here. And I looked at her and I said, I want to take yoga classes. And she said, well, you've come to the right place then. And I sort of went off with the timetable and realised that now it's Doha heat, it's hot, I can't go outside and do the activities that I would usually do, running, cycling, walking.
Yeah.
And yoga seemed the perfect answer to sort of go and do classes every day. And I started to really feel a difference in myself. I started to feel as if I'd perhaps been under a dark cloud for quite a while, and I was beginning to bring my head up and look around and see the world with new eyes. I feel also as well my body was beginning to feel differently. I think I'd felt quite tired. I think my digestion and my eating had been quite challenging. And suddenly I'd practiced yoga for years ago as well. But I had only kind of had a self-practice at home. It had been quite a while since I'd actually been in classes. And to start experiencing those hands-on corrections and the narratives that the teachers give you to realize what your body can be capable of, and you reach a milestone of being able to achieve a pose.
I get it.
I really turned a corner with my practice.
That's amazing. So when you speak of milestones for yourself, what is it that you remember, the first ever milestone at Neo Yoga? What was it?
Yeah, I love that question because I have a very clear memory. I would always go to the back of the room. I would always hide in the back of the room. And one of the teachers there's a guy there called Dav who does these amazing dynamic vinyasa classes with arm balances, and I'd look at all the girls in front of me getting into crow and pincher, and I'd be like, I'm never going to be able to do that. Just breathe. And 6 weeks I was holding my crow, and I just remember please see me, and just to achieve it for myself. I did it. It was amazing.
And what feeling did that give you at that moment?
Well, it's an interesting experience because I have a very successful career. I have a beautiful family. I have a wonderful marriage. I have amazing friends. And then suddenly you're doing something for no other reason than to serve yourself.
Very, very important, serving oneself.
Yep.
And I think everyone out there can resonate somehow, whether you're not feeling yourself or not serving yourself. Now would be a great time to, or if you have experienced what Mary has experienced, we'd love to hear that from you guys as well. So we spoke about milestones, or Mary's milestones. For Doha Heat, we have one of the milestones that we've hit for this year, which is we have the first sponsor for 2018, and that's Warwick Hotel Doha. So a colleague and I had an amazing experience at Warwick. We were invited to taste their iftar. Maybe, Mary, you're familiar with iftar tents around Doha. Don't know if you've been to any of them. But for me, this was my first Ramadan experience this month outside of home. So I was happily surprised that I didn't have to cook this particular day last week, and it was a nice pampering treat. And if anyone wants to experience that iftar package, they can go there, or the Eid. They've got an Eid lunch or brunch coming up for 240 riyals, so very affordable. Treats from all around the world. Check it out. And they're located in Al Sadd. So don't know if you're familiar with that area, but they've got only a few hotels, and Warwick is one of them, just there on the corner next to Sports Roundabout. So how about you, Mary? What has been your yoga experience this Ramadan? Any reflections or any other milestones?
I think this Ramadan and teaching yoga has really been a special experience. I achieved my yoga teacher training certificate in January.
Another milestone. Yeah?
Another milestone. Again, I was so lucky that my family supported me, and I went to Bali for 5 weeks and was able...
Was that a retreat?
It was a teacher training
Teacher
program.
training, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was quite an experience to be away from my family, to be on my own, which, having been married for nearly 20 years...
Again, serving yourself, the sole purpose.
Yeah. And just to quote my friend Alicia, how bad can it be? You're on a beach in Bali. I cried myself to sleep a lot of nights. It was really healing and cleansing. There were things I experienced that I had no idea this was part of yoga teacher training. it was just a phenomenal experience. So I was able to come back and set up myself as a yoga teacher, which I've sort of been doing now for coming on for 6 months.
Okay, so it's fresh, and you're fresh.
Yeah. I've managed to, on average, achieve something between 9 and 11 classes a week. During Ramadan, you know, I thought that would start to quieten down a bit. Certainly during the summer it will. But one of my classes, and so another milestone, was being able to teach at Nia Yoga.
Amazing. So that collaboration, again, that serendipitous moment that is part of your history, you were able to then be a teacher at the place you were being taught.
It was potentially one of my proudest moments, actually, for myself, because it's just something that was very personal to me, and it's a beautiful space, and I feel so proud when I go in there to teach. And one of the most enjoyable classes that I have is a yin class.
I love that. I'm just glad you mentioned. Say more about yin. What's yin?
What's yin? So again, I was introduced to yin through Nia Yoga, and I was able to complete part of my teacher training there in yin. Mm-hmm. So again, we have this wonderful opportunity of teacher trainings that happen at the studio with a fantastic teacher called Amara, who is so giving and loving in the information she gives us, and we're then able to give it to our students. So of course during Ramadan what I was able to do was to invite the students to participate in a sequence of digestive benefits.
There you go. That's exactly what I was going to ask you, because with Ramadan there are misconceptions and there are also things that are overlooked. So what about the healthy side? But mind, body and soul, obviously. So just because someone is fasting, can you say more from a yoga professional's point of view? What's the, focus, because fasting breeds focus, actually. So say more about it.
It does, and so you can really take your practice to a deeper level. You can move the practice into a slow place, so that you can move into your poses, and you can take more time to come inside the body, experience the sensations the body is giving you, start to understand anything that comes up for you. Usually through yin as well, a lot of emotions can come up. It can be a very healing practice. So I think coming through the environment and the experience of reflection of Ramadan, to come into a practice like that
as well,
you know, things are really on the edge, and it gives you a great opportunity to really start investigating what's going on with you. There's a particular sequence that I found in a few classes has been very moving for my students. So I begin to prepare them, you know, knowing that this may happen. I'm very careful with the music that I choose. I start to bring essential oils in to bring them comfort, and I'm also careful towards the end of the practice that we take an opportunity to close the space so we can protect the emotions, protect the heart.
I have heard about that. So say more about that protection of heart and emotions, because for people who are viewing who have no experience or have never visited or done a yoga class, say more about that, the emotions being open, and then have and then the necessity to close those.
Gosh, I mean that's a whole workshop right there.
Okay,
so let me try
in a nutshell.
So let me do this with a little example. Let's put our feet flat on the floor.
Okay.
Uncross our legs, and perhaps if you're watching, you want to do this as well, or if you're listening.
Very good.
And just bring the coccyx, the tailbone, into the back of the chair. Bring the hands down onto the thighs. Roll the shoulders up to the ears. Bring them down to reach the spine. So you're opening up through the upper chest. If you want to just close off the eyes and start to feel still and gentle within your breath. So as you inhale, start to soften your belly so that there is space for your lungs to fill. And as you exhale, see if you can experience a sensation of sinking slightly deeper. Bring your attention inside the body, bring your attention to your hip bones. And you may feel that they're quite tense. You may feel that there's some challenges there. You may be squeezing them. Even if you're sat on a chair, you're bringing them to quite a closed place. So it's kind of, the philosophy is that we hold our emotions in our hip bones. And we spend most of the day sat like this, in a car, in an office. When we come into a yoga practice, one of the things we like to work on with our students is to release the hips.
Release. I was just about to ask
so
that.
Now as you're sat, just open your legs a little bit and start to experience how that may feel slightly differently through the hip bones.
Almost just more comfort comes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so that physical release in itself can start to bring you an opportunity to investigate what might be going on through the mind.
Okay, so whatever's going on for someone during a typical day, whether it's in their conscious mind or subconscious mind, the body is a tool to like open that up.
The body just soaks it up. The body just soaks every piece of stress that you come across.
And is that another reason why those who find they're anxious or they're stressed, their body reacts accordingly through either dermatological issues, or it's like your body speaking, maybe pain in your back or whatever it is.
It's I mean, these are all very classic sort of sound bites that we tend to hear throughout the time. When I teach, I always try to present my classes with an anatomical explanation, a philosophical explanation, an emotional explanation, and a spiritual explanation.
And bring them all together so someone can understand it better. Okay.
Yeah.
So for those people out there who, I mean, inshallah, I'm sure nowadays people have definitely experienced some form of yoga, even if they're not into it. Maybe they've tagged along to a class with a friend, or they've just experienced it just for the fun of it. What would you say to those people who completely block that? Because there are, skeptics who say, you know what, not into that, for reasons that might not be true, like misconceptions or whatever. What would you say reaching out to those who are they love experiencing things, but for some reason they've just put yoga on the shelf, they're not interested?
That's a good question, yeah.
Because what would you say?
Well, I think there's been a huge shift in the yoga world over the last few years as well. I think that was part of my experience. When I first started to go to classes, it was perhaps in the church hall, and it was a little bit of a geriatric experience. Not so much now. Just look to Instagram and you'll start to see some extraordinary things. That doesn't mean to say that it's moved away completely from the philosophy, but I think there is always going to be something there that suits you. There's so many ways to execute the philosophy now. You can really find something that would suit. And I think the most interesting thing that I found is the scientific link, because spiritually I can feel it on a spiritual level. Anybody can feel whatever they want to feel. It's completely authentic. You own your own practice. When it comes to scientific research, and actually I'm moving my arm, I can't deny that's happening. And so you can start to build on the poses with scientific research that shows you the benefits. And so if you are a skeptic, as you say, look to the science, see what the science says,
and see it through that perspective. And then there might be people out there who are skeptics for reasons such as spirituality and misconceptions like, I'm not into that woo-woo thing, which to be honest, I've never experienced anything woo-woo about yoga. For me it was for alignment, and for relaxation before sleep. That's why I did the yin class, which was actually really late at night, late for a mom anyway, 9:30. So for me that was just nice, because it's like closing off the day and then preparing for sleep. So I this is another discussion, but I know that everyone is you're on your phones, that light is blazing into your eyes, and that has more impact than we think it does. Laptops, cell phones, TV and whatever. So I really enjoyed that particular yin class that was for the purpose of preparing for sleep. And say more about how, I'm just thinking now about physical body, feeling that release from yoga poses. How does that complement other practices such as massage?
That's a good
right?
question.
Because someone might say, why should I go to yoga when I can have a massage or something like that?
Well, I think because you can reach another level with a meditative state. By using the breath as well, you can bring yourself into your mind and you can start to find a mind-body connection.
Okay.
So you can start to understand why you may have muscular uncomfort in certain areas, because now you're using your mind through the breath and you have a greater awareness through the practice than perhaps you would with a massage.
Yeah.
Also, we tend to bring an intention to the practice. So if there's something you want to work through in your life, if you want to work on patience or tolerance, if you want to work on strength, and this is going to sound so cliche, but everything that you practice on the mat, you really can use for relativity in your everyday life.
For me, it's discipline.
There you go.
So what would your advice be to me personally about how yoga can give me that discipline that I'm seeking?
To seek a daily practice, I would say, to seek a daily practice, and all will be revealed. As yoga teachers, we don't kind of tell you what to do.
It's empowerment. It's through empowerment.
And I, again, originally I was curious about empowerment because I'd had experiences in yoga classes where I felt empowered, and I really stopped and looked at, why did I feel that? And it wasn't that anybody took my hand and took me there.
It was yourself.
It just opened the door and I went through.
Yes, true.
So
it's not about advice, it's through questions and working with the body and the connection in order for that person to experience it themselves without any noise, really. Someone else's noise.
Yes, and if you've been to one of my classes, you know I don't tend to be very quiet.
You don't? You're not quiet?
I am not quiet. I tend to give a lot of narrative.
Very good. Storytelling.
I'm always talking to you about your breath, where you're supposed to have your alignment, and particularly in yin. The other thing I wanted to say about teaching here in Doha as well, I was so interested to bring the practice back and teach with my Islamic brothers and sisters. And that's been a great experience because the spirituality of the practice
is already there.
And it doesn't interfere with any other Islamic practices. You know, I was curious about how that would be.
Very interesting.
But it's been dovetailed nicely in.
Do you know, I think it depends on the individual and their understanding of their spirituality. And when they are in tuned and aligned with themselves, they will do what it is that they feel is correct and right. So, and it's the same thing with your body. You know, we all know what our body is capable of. So when you push your body in order to achieve a goal or a milestone, like you said, like was it the crow or the crab or
crow?
Okay. So you knew that eventually you would get there, but you're just taking your time because you were realistic with what your body tells you I can do. So it's the same thing with spirituality. Everyone knows deep down inside what it is right and wrong for them.
Absolutely.
And then they can adjust accordingly. So thank you for all your time, and tell us, please, where can we find you?
Where can you find me? Well, finally, and this was the other interesting dilemma that I had. You know, for years I've marketed and promoted other people and put projects onto the international stage, and it's not been a problem. But when it came to me, it was a block. So finally, my husband and my daughter supported me in getting my Instagram and my Facebook and all the marketing tools, all the hashtags and all of that. So I must thank my daughter for that, who introduced me to a whole new experience of Instagram. So I do now have Yoga Bugg Doha, which is my Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook as well as Yoga Bugg. Yoga Bugg. So it's Yoga Bugg. Yes. And say more about your website, or where are you located? How can we... so I live in the Pearl, and I have a schedule of classes available. If you want to private message me, I post my classes weekly on my social media. I can take private classes. Groups as well? I can take private groups. And I teach regularly at Nia Yoga. So you can either see me, I teach the kids there. And I teach yin once a week. So yin once a week with Mary. Gonna check that out, because if those sleep junkies who need a lovely night's sleep, I would definitely recommend yin. If you do message me through this podcast, if you mention Doha Heat, you will get your first session with a 50% discount.
Hear that, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 50% discount with Mary from a yoga class if you mention Doha Heat. And we would like to thank our sponsors, Warwick Hotel Doha, once again, who, by the way, also treated us to a wonderful massage at the same. So just before we had the iftar that we mentioned, we had a colleague of mine had a Swedish massage, and I had the Balinese. So you might be familiar that with your trip to Bali.
Yeah.
So total relaxation, and if you want to avail the Eid offer that they have, it's 450 riyals for a detox massage, for a body scrub, they've got all sorts going on there, and a facial. So check out Warwick Hotel Doha, and you'll see it in the comments to be able to look them up. And Mary Bugg, can we just state your Instagram name here?
Yes.
It's Yoga Bugg Doha, all one word on Instagram.
Yes.
Yoga Bugg, and it's Bug with a double G.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're quite welcome.
Mention Doha Heat if you want that lovely yoga 50% discount, and we'll see you next time.